Hey, everybody. How's everyone doing? Welcome back to
Hello.
Howdy Partner. Hey, hello. Awesome. So, real quick, for those who are new to Howdy Partner, we're a weekly Twitch series highlighting AWS partners that have built innovative solutions validated by AWS solutions architects. So, Howdy Partner is designed to help the AWS cloud community, both the experts and the individuals new to the cloud, learn how leveraging APN solutions can help your organizations drive bigger results and better business. So today we're actually joined by OutSystems. So welcome, Sydney and Rui. Would you like to introduce yourselves real quick?
Hey, awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Hey, everyone. My name is Sydney Lai. I'm a developer advocate, and that is also my partner, Ruri Barbosa. Homie.
Homie,
you're on mute.
Rui. Yeah.
You are muted, my friend.
I think that's the sentence of the year, right? Yeah. So yes, Rui over here. I'm also a developer advocate at OutSystems, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Awesome, wonderful. We're very excited to see what you have in store for us. And then I also have my co-host, Eugene. Eugene is actually going to give us a quick introduction into our topic today. So Eugene, why don't you go ahead and take it away, man?
Thanks, Braeden. And for those of you just joining, welcome. We're glad that you're here. So as Braeden had talked about a little bit earlier, Howdy Partner is for a developer-centric audience. And I'm really excited for today's episode with OutSystems because they built a solution that is pretty much helping developers develop in a different kind of way. And so the topic of today is how can AWS and OutSystems help developers build mobile or web applications faster and easier. And so originally, I had a pretty exciting React project to show you guys with Amplify, which I'll go into in a little bit, but that isn't the case. So bear with me for the next 5 to 10-ish minutes as I kind of go through a spiel about some of the AWS services that you can use to help build your mobile and web applications faster. So many of you may know about certain AWS services, such as like Elastic Beanstalk, which is used for kind of deploying your application. It's an easy to use service that you can just kind of plug and play, where you just have to kind of upload your code, and it will pretty much deploy and scale your web application for you. There's also other services such as Amazon Cognito, which is a service that provides authentication, authorization, and user management, specifically designed for web and mobile applications. So the two kind of main components of Amazon Cognito, if you haven't used it before, is the user pool and identity pool. User pools are directories that can be used to provide sign up and sign in options for your customers or your app users. Identity pools are the things that allows the users to gain certain access into AWS services. And so a couple things here that are really cool is they have cool social features such as social sign-in like Facebook, Google, Apple, and whatnot. And they also have security features like MFA and phone plus email verification that's already pre-built into the service. So you don't really have to worry about that. And also I kind of want to also talk about Amazon API Gateway. Amazon API Gateway is a service that helps developer easily create and manage REST APIs. So when we're talking about creating web applications and things like that, you don't have to worry about kind of the scalability or throttling that occurs when it hits your URL. It natively integrates with CloudFront, which is Amazon's AWS's content delivery network. So you can kind of globally distribute your application anywhere around the world. So when you're building out your mobile app, organizing their APIs for backend processing is pretty crucial. And so guess what? API Gateway is a great front door for a lot of different services to be used. And then I'm gonna quickly just go into a couple other things, which is gonna be Amazon S3 and Device Farm. So S3, as you know, was one of AWS's first services to come out. And it's essentially an object storage service that pretty much enables access of data from any device. So you may think of S3 as something that is used to store stuff, or you may know S3 as something that you can actually host a static web application on. So S3, again, really powerful. And lastly, I'm going to talk about device farm. So some of you may not have heard of Device Farm, but it's a service that creates quote unquote like a farm of mobile devices to kind of test your application without really provisioning any like testing infrastructure. So there's kind of like two ways to interact with Device Farm. You can either like automate the testing of your application using a variety of like test frameworks or remote access into the device where you can interact with the app in real time. Because, you know, as developers, we all know not to just push out code to production without testing, right? So the last thing I'm going to talk about, and the thing that was like kind of I'm a little bit upset that I can't really show you all right now, but it's AWS Amplify. So I just talked about a lot of disparate like different services that is used for kind of like certain components. Well, AWS Amplify is essentially a framework of libraries, components. And essentially like a framework that allows you to kind of provision your backend components of your application without having to kind of building it from scratch. So instead of having to either use your AWS CLI or going into your management console, you don't have to kind of like, hey, I need to provision an S3 bucket to be used in this app. I don't need to kind of provision a code pipeline to allow any changes into my code base and for it to automatically go all the way up to get deployed into production. Amplify kind of does that for you. So with a couple like Amplify CLI commands, you're able to kind of provision your entire backend infrastructure. Now, again, saying all this is not as exciting as showing it, but what is going to be highly exciting is how OutSystem is going to demo building an application like live with you all. And so I think with that, I'm hoping I'm not losing too many viewers by saying all this, but I'm going to hand it off to Sydney and Rui, and for you to kind of just go into what OutSystem is about and what you're going to be demoing for us today. So Sydney or Rui, I'll let you take it off.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Well, I'll just give a little bit of context. If we can just throw up that slide, I'll show. Yeah. All right. Look at us. Look at that. Look at that. So basically, OutSystems is a developer platform where you can build web and mobile applications on the enterprise level. On the right-hand side, I just illustrate simply what you can build. And I mean, like I said, if you are primarily a web developer, you can also make native mobile applications, Android, iOS, you name it. We also have our own open source like libraries and components where you can create different types of integrations and wrappers for APIs. You can enable any kind of chat, SMS. You can have bots into your workflow. Another thing is, of course, you can build whatever you're looking to do. So a huge surprise to a lot of teams is that with our developer platform, you can also make it IoT enabled. So I can drop in the chat in just a moment, like a video walkthrough of one of our dev advocates building a AI enabled candy dispenser. Rui and I also have a video on building an Ethereum wallet with OutSystems. So there are also customers that are using OutSystems to build blockchain enabled tech. And then of course, our kind of like bread and butter is the AI-led development. So later we can show you like in the logic flow of how we also have like AI-assisted development in terms of like, hey, if you're building this, how about this intent? And how about we suggest this in terms of your build? So I think that's pretty high level, but we can also get into the nitty gritty of building an Instagram clone since everyone is familiar with Instagram. It's just a lot easier to contextualize. Rui, I don't know if you want to jump in and say anything as well.
Yeah, let's just do it. Let's just do some coding for the audience.
Awesome. So let me go ahead and take Sydney's screen share, and then we're going to get your screen here up in 1 second. You ready, Rui?
I am. Give me some feedback when I'm sharing my screen.
We have your screen.
All right. Okay. So let's just do some coding, right? So I want you folks to see how this thing is done. So I'm bringing up the integrated development environment This is a brand new one that we have, actually. So I'm using a beta version. What could go wrong, right? And I'll see you. We'll see how an application is built. So right now, I brought it up. It automatically connected to what is designated as my personal environment. So in OutSystems, you're always coding against an environment. Okay. So I'm going to just do new application, and I'm just going to do start from scratch. And we can do essentially two types of application, right? So the ones that are interesting at the moment are these top ones, okay? And this is reactive JS web application, okay? It does have a few extra flavors like a tablet app and a phone app, and this means that I have some extra options in the way that I deploy them. I can actually deploy them through an app store like Apple or Google Play, okay? And below here, there's, ignore this stuff that I have here. We can also do some traditional web applications or just build some APIs and services, right? So things that don't even have a visual UI, okay? So let's go today for a phone app. I'm going to click next. I'm going to call this Instagram, okay? So the use case that we're going to do today is something like an Instagram, right? Something where I can see some posts with pictures and comments, do a like, and maybe take a picture, make a comment, and create a new post, all right? There we go. So let's create the application and create the module of the application. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is to actually grab a few other modules so that I do have some data and some things ready to show you, right? It would be fairly boring to kind of do all of this from scratch, creating data and creating databases and so on. So I've got this Instagram code over here, and I do have a few APIs and a few database tables with some data for us to work with. Okay.
Yeah, you're also able to import a lot of the UI as well, so that, like, for example, I'm not a very good front end developer, and if you want templates, if you want any kind of pre-existing libraries, you can bring that in. So that's kind of the process that Rui's going through right now.
Okay, so the next one that I'm going to use, it's a simple camera plugin because I do need to take a picture. Okay, so I'm just going to select this method from that plugin called take a picture. And by the way, this camera plugin is a simple JavaScript library, no more, no less than that. And I also want to bring in this image utils, again, another JavaScript library, because I do want to resize the images. So mobile phones today, they take huge pictures, right? This is a mobile application, might be being used on 4G. The screen is rather small, so we have to be cognizant of these types of things, right?
And so, Rui, I have a quick question. So, in terms of creating or having that function of taking a picture, is like the kind of code or the sauce, like the secret sauce that makes it work, is it pretty agnostic across any like devices, whether it is Android or iOS?
Absolutely, right? So if I'm deploying this application just using a browser, right? So it picks up the browser functionalities to grab the camera and take a picture. If I'm deploying this application as a native application for Android or iOS, it will use the corresponding Cordova plugin to bring up the camera and interface with the camera. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
That was a good question.
Okay. So, and right now I'm going to do another thing because I want to actually bring those references to show you the data. I'm going to do this one-click publish. And this allows me to talk a little bit about the secret sauce of OutSystems, right? So you heard me talking that, oh, yes, we can use JavaScript. OutSystems uses only standard technologies, right? So there is no such thing as an OutSystems application. It doesn't exist. What exists is this IDE, this visual language that I'm going to show you. But in the end, what happens is what gets deployed into a server is a standard application. In this particular case, it's going to be a React.js application that is going to run on the browser, and the backend is going to be done in C#, and everything will be working together. So when I click that button, this is what happened. This visual model that it's rather empty for now, it's being sent into the server. Of course, this is a development platform, so it does have all your code, the code check-ins, the merges, and all that life cycle management of the application. And then this standard code is actually extracted from this visual method model. I'm sorry. So all the CSS, JavaScript, and so on, it's all extracted. Whatever needs to be compiled, such as C#, it gets compiled. Then it gets deployed and it's made available to the server, right? And this is a particular difference between OutSystems and other so-called low-code tools, because we do go through all this process, right? So we actually generate a standard application that can scale as a normal standard React.js application would scale.
Hey, Rui, sorry, one quick other thing. Is it okay if you kind of blow up your screen just a little bit, or like zoom in a little bit for our audience to kind of make sure to kind of see all of the little Dune boggles and everything that you have going on?
I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, open it up, because right now we see all your icons on half of your screen. There you go.
Yeah. All right.
And sorry, Rui, and I apologize. I'm probably going to be interrupting you quite often because I'm like, kind of fascinated. But in terms of, so you're saying that you're going to be creating like a React app kind of as like a front end framework. What other options does OutSystems kind of give developers? Like what other frameworks are out there? And you were saying how in the back end is going to be C#. Yeah, could you kind of just go over like the different possibilities?
Right. So OutSystems exists for 20 years now, right? So we've been doing this a lot. And throughout these years, we've been creating different stacks and evolving those stacks. We typically only support one or two stacks at the same time. So we actually started with, do you guys, probably the audience is too young for this, but if you guys remember those Nokia phones that had WAP protocol, where you created an application with SMS messaging, right, back and forth. You had a menu and that type of thing. So originally it started with that. Then we moved into ASP.NET, pure ASP.NET. At some point, we actually had Java, right? Then we actually abandoned Java and we stayed with, we evolved the ASP.NET. And now we moved into the React.js single page application kind of thing, right? Okay. So typically we support one stack at a time, maybe two, but the secret sauce of OutSystems is this, right? So I don't know what tomorrow is going to be, right? So we created this development, this visual development model, right? And we can translate it into different standard languages, right? So today is C# and .NET and React.js. Maybe tomorrow it will be Node.js and Scala, right? Or Python or whatever comes, right? It all depends on how are the languages and how are the technology evolving, how is the technology evolving, and the decision to go a certain route, based on our customers and the needs of the markets and so on. The decision to go, for example, for React.js was, okay, we do need a JavaScript framework, right? At that point, we considered Angular, we considered React, eventually chose React, and that's what we have now.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so let me just take a tour around here a little bit. So you do see these tabs over here. So this integrated development environment is where you would do all things. I swapped into the data tab. Typically, OutSystems, by default, out of the box, by default, it works with a relational database model. But of course, you can use, other types of databases like NoSQL and so on, right? Just want to show you, you have all the relational database things that you would expect, primary keys, foreign keys, etc. You can create the database inside OutSystems, and obviously it will use an external, well, not an external, but it will use the associated SQL server to it. So let me just go here and show you that I do have some data, and this was the thing that I wanted to load from that module. I do have some posts with some pictures and comments and so on and so forth. Okay, so I've got posts, I got the likes For the posts, I've got the user pictures and so on. So this area is where you handle all your databases, data, and data structures, so to speak. This one over here is where you do all your logic, okay? So let me show you something. Let me show you how the code actually looks like in OutSystems. Maybe just open this one. Okay, so this is how we code, all right? We code using this visual paradigm. In this case, it's a flowchart. And these server-side actions, you see here where it says server-side actions, are the ones that are actually going to be translated into C#, compiled, deployed in the server, and then made available. However, let's take a look at the client-side actions, okay, which are going to be translated into JavaScript, deployed in the server. They end up running on a browser, on your browser application. And look how we actually code on this. Let me get an example. Well, as you can see, it's exactly the same way. So for me as a developer, I am very cognizant if I'm doing a client action or a server action, not because one goes into C# and the other goes into JavaScript, but because I have to be aware that something is going to be run on the browser and something is going to be run on the server. But it's seamless for me. I code exactly the same way. All right. Finally, this is the where I will do all my UI. Okay, the interface, we take care of the UI. So this is where we design screens and screen objects and all the interface. And in here, we use simple HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. Any questions so far, or can I move on?
So I guess like in terms of like when you were on that logic or like the interface,
Okay.
I know that you mentioned earlier that OutSystems has been in the game for around like 20 years, and a lot of that kind of experience and working and and developing has kind of created like a very rich feature set of like different logics, and just different type of use cases that you can just drag and drop into like your diagram, right? That you're kind of showing us right here. So one question I had is, well, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but what's the process looking like when, let's just say, like, I'm working, I'm trying to build like an application on OutSystems, and for some reason I'm like, hey, there's like a function that isn't like present. How will we kind of communicate and add and get OutSystems to have those functions, maybe like in their next release?
Yeah. So let me see if I got your question correct. What OutSystems does is this process of translating the code, right? But because we use standard technologies, it's also easy to bring things in to the platform, right? So, for example, we didn't have a way to use NoSQL databases, right? So how am I stuck? As a developer, am I stuck? I need to use NoSQL database, maybe DynamoDB, right? Am I stuck with that? No, absolutely not. Because what I can do is, and that actually happened. Someone grabbed, it wasn't me. Someone grabbed the C# driver for DynamoDB and brought the methods of that C# driver into the platform. So if you're stuck, you have an SDK or a C# method of using it, you just build a little wrapper around it and expose those functionalities into the platform.
Yeah.
Okay?
We also have our own open source repo as well.
Yeah, I'll show that. I'll show that in a minute.
Yeah.
The same happens for JavaScript, right? I can actually put JavaScript directly in my application. That's not a problem. And so, for example, the other day I needed some cryptographic functions in JavaScript. So no problem, right? So web APIs grabbed all of that, packaged that in a way that made sense for a developer to use and use them directly on OutSystems. So OutSystems is very flexible from that point of view, from that perspective. Okay, and I can actually show what Sydney was talking about. We do have something that it's called the Forge, right? So think of the Forge as a Git, a generic Git, but specific for OutSystems. So for us, it's kind of hard to have a Git because the code is visual, right? So we created this. This is an open source code repository. And you will find a lot of, so let me check, for example, Dynamo, right? You will find a lot of components that were created by the community, or hey, let me check AWS. Look at that. Right, so you can
Oh, yeah, we
see
should have,
a bunch of
few.
AWS components that we already have. So it's very easy to extend the functionalities of the platform with other things. Is that good?
Yeah.
All right. Any comments, questions?
No, Rick, go ahead. I think
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll pop
feel
you
free
in
to.
stop.
Okay,
feel free to
so
have the questions.
let's build it. No, I'm because I'm not seeing the video feed here, so I need to communicate with you folks using voice. So let's create a new screen, okay? I am just going to call this home, all right? And despite I'm using an empty application, right? There's always some structure to it. So I do have the traditional structure of a mobile phone, okay, with a title and a header and a content area and so on. But by all means, if you want to completely redesign the way this is looking like, you can, right? So you are in no ways limited to what is being presented here. So I'm just going to give it a title. I'm going to call it AW Stagram, right? And the first thing that I need is to get some data, right? So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say fetch data from database. And again, this database is on the server side, okay? I'm going to fetch data from database. And I'm going to use that table that I was showing there, which is the posts, okay? There we go. And it actually queries the table and gives me a little bit of data just for me to see if I'm doing the right thing. Now, the posts actually had a foreign key. If you look here, the posts have a foreign key to the user, right? So, and I do want to show which user made the post. So I'm going to add the user. And as you can see, it's trying to infer the connection between those two tables, right? So the posts has a foreign key to the users. You link to users. So let me link these two tables using that. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't get it right, but this time this is exactly what I want. So I want to post with the users and so on and so forth. Now, note again, this is pure SQL, and I can actually inspect and see the exact SQL sentence that it's going to be sent to the server to get this data, right? So if I copy and paste this and apply it in, actually here, I'm using SQL Server and paste it on any tool that queries the server directly, this would run, okay?
So
Thoughts,
Rui,
comments?
yeah. So yeah, I had a couple questions about just kind of how does the can you kind of walk us through, like, you know, you just created like you started adding kind of like a database. I guess, like, how does that kind of like work in the back end? Like, so we kind of, like, so I was kind of referencing earlier, right, with Amplify that you're able to kind of just connect to a database with a couple of commands. So how does OutSystems really kind of have be able to kind of construct like all this back end without you having to worry about that?
Yeah. So we worry a lot about the productivity of the developer, right? And you made a really good point, which is, how am I able to do a query on something that's on the server side and going to use it on my React.js application, right? There's something is missing. How does it get from one place to the other? So it is going to use the normal standard stuff. I'm just going to call it the best practice, right? So it's going to ping something on the server that it's going to execute the query, right? That something is exposed through a REST API. And the worker process of this PWA, it's going to use that. It's going to ask the server to get the data. The server will feed the data through using a JSON format. The application takes care of the parsing and then displays the data on the screen, just like you would do. Now, you didn't see me do all of this, right? Because once I click publish, all of this will happen automatically. Okay, does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that does. Yeah. So I think like the key thing here, right, is again, you don't have to worry about kind of you don't have to worry about kind of provisioning all of these things. Like it's kind of already it's abstracted for you. Like the biggest thing for you to focus on is just making your app go, right? You're always thinking about the app. But anyway, sorry, that just thinking that's really cool.
Absolutely correct. And a lot of developers they are like, oh, but can I see the code? Can I see the code? Yeah, sure, you can see the code. And it's more of a curiosity thing, right? So the first impact is like, oh, I don't know what this is doing in the background, right? I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And sure, you can take a look at what's behind the scenes. That's perfectly okay. Everything is available there for you. But it's a matter of curiosity, right? I mean, the second, third, fourth time they start to forget about that or don't care about that anymore and just start to think about the application itself, right? And it's also a key feature of OutSystems is that it ends up giving me a lot more time or a lot more, how to say, a lot more availability to think about the problem that I'm trying to resolve rather than so much the specific technical issue or the amount of work that I need to do to get there, right? So yes, absolutely correct. It's another level of abstraction, right? So I can imagine then when the first few compiled languages showed up, and before people were probably coding in assembler, right? The feeling was the same, right? So yes, I'm coding in this, I don't know, Fortran or something, and this is going to get compiled, and I need to look at the code. I need to look at the assembler language and see if this is giving the correct instructions to the processor, right? But people don't do that anymore, right? And hopefully they won't do that with this next generation of these types of platforms and languages.
Hey, Braeden, I think there's a question in the chat.
Awesome. Let me pick that up there.
Yeah, I'm unable to respond, but we have templates.
Oh, actually, yeah, Braeden, do you want to ask the question so that everyone can hear?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and pull it up here. A fun feature. So we have a question from otra vez Zapar. Sorry, I tried. It's about systems. Less than a year. A struggle that they have found is the difficulty in having their own style while building their applications. Right. So, is there a way to personalize existing components, or maybe quickly build out their own components?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all this you are going to see a certain style from the application, right? That is coming from a theme. Okay, so if I open, let me see, for example, let me open the CSS. I'm using a base library of OutSystems UI. So it comes packaged with a bunch of components, calendars, and so on and so forth. Actually, I can show them here. You see here, these are all visual widgets, so to speak, or visual objects, right, that come bundled with this. But even this OutSystems UI, both the theme and these components, these are open source, right? These are locked in the sense you cannot change them, but you can open them, clone them, and make them your own. So for example, if we do have a range slider, a simple range slider, you want to customize the range slider, be my guest, open this, copy the code to somewhere else, make it your own, and then transform it. The same happens with the OutSystems UI, right? So this base theme that you're going to see today, a lot of our customers, they want to have their own themes and their own. So they just go in here and they start doing their theme, right? Their CSS classes from scratch and use that on their applications.
Also, I want to say if you are new to OutSystems, then I just say start with the template. We have libraries full of different templates. Like if you want to build a banking app, if you want to create some sort of HR tool, whatever it is, start there with the template and then make modifications to the template rather than building exactly from scratch, because that can be daunting for new devs. Yeah.
The template kind of sounds like quick starts.
Yeah. A lot like that.
We actually had a follow-up with that, right? So you mentioned customizing your theme, starting with a template and then making it, you can make it your own. Now, to that point, who owns the code? Do I own the code? Am I locked in? Does it just stay there? How does that work?
That's a little bit of a commercial question, almost, right? Because it talks about license. But I don't want to talk about licensing. Let me just say this: one of the selling points of OutSystems, so to speak, is that we never want or we absolutely don't want the IP, the code to be lost from a customer, right? So a customer comes to us, it's using this, invests, I don't know, 2-3 years. They say, okay, I'm tired of you guys. I really don't like that Rui Barbosa guy. I'm done. Now what happens, right? Because we use standard code, and very few of these platforms do, we are able to say, hey, here's your code, your applications are continuing to work. Right? So who owns the IP of the code? Well, the customer, you yourself, you own that, right? So even when there's a contract with OutSystems, then you say, I don't want it anymore, you will not lose that investment that you made with OutSystems.
Yeah, it's just like any other dev tool, any other dev platform, really.
Right? But
Awesome.
not necessarily development platforms, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. Okay, so let's code a little bit more. I'm getting anxious here. So I do have some posts, right? I want to show the posts here. So yeah, first screen, user, and so on and so forth. I am going to, because this is database, right? It's a list. I'm going to grab a list, put the list on the screen, and I'm going to say bind that list to that query, right? So the worker process is going to do its magic and parse whatever needs to be parsed. Now, I also want to have an item for each one of them, right? So I'm going to drag this list item over here. Now, this list item always comes with this extra stuff to remind developers, but if it is on a phone, it allows the swipe left and swipe right kind of thing. So I'm just going to remove this from here. Okay. Just going to say delete. I don't want any actions over here. And now I want to have, let me think. So for this, I want to have, let's say, an image, right? So typically, things like Instagram and this kind of use case, we're gonna use an image. So I'm gonna drop an image over here, if I can. Again, sorry guys, this is a beta. Okay, I got an image. And it's going to ask me, hey, where's this image coming from? Is this something that's a resource of my application? Is it coming from an external URL? But in this case, it's coming from the database, right? So it's a binary data kind of thing. And where is the binary data stored? Well, it's actually stored on the database, right? So again, think of all the actions that you would have to do, right? To grab a binary from the database, probably base64 encoded, feed it through the REST API, get it on the client side, grab the base64, put it in binary again, or just display the base64 on the application, right? So all of this stuff, it's just abstracted. I want an image, it's coming from the database, then boom, you're done, okay? Now, I also want to grab some extra information, right? So I'm going to drag a div over here. So we call it a container, but in HTML, this translates with just a div. So now I have an extra space here. And I can drag and drop information directly from here. So let's say I want the comment, the description of this post, right? And I want let's say the date, okay? So I can just drag and drop this. And I also want to have the name of the user who posted it, okay? So when I'm dragging and dropping, chasing the pixel, I can actually go here and see, like all the objects of the HTML. And I can see that I actually dropped this in the wrong place. I'll put inside the container, so I can manipulate this over here. Now, you folks were talking about themes and style guides. I'm really terrible at CSS. You can see there are some bolts over here, so I'm just going to remove these bolts. And I can, but I do want to prove that this works with pure CSS, right? So let's say the description stays the same, but I want to make the date slightly smaller. Right now, I do have this little designer over here, so it's kind of a wizard for me that don't understand or really don't like to use CSS. It's designer for me, so I can just say, for example, hey, I want to show this slightly smaller, right? And you can see that the CSS was changed over here, right? So pure CSS. However, if I want to have a proper CSS class, so let's just create one really quickly. And I wanted to do this in a way that it could be seen. Okay, so I'm going to make a class. I'm going to call it text small, for example. Okay, and on my text small, again, you do have all the bells and whistles, right? All the autocomplete and that kind of stuff. But I'm going to use my trusty wizard over here. So I'm just going to say size 12. Now, if I associate this directly with the expression, so when I go here, I'm just going to say, okay, the style class for this, it's text. You see how it recognizes this, right? So I am applying this over here, and I'm going to also to apply this. I'm sorry, also to apply this over here. Text, where is it? Small. Now watch this. Can we see the text, right? So if I say this is, I don't know, 122. I'm sorry, let's say 14. Right? You see what's happening? It changes immediately for the things that I'm trying to do, right? So this actually has the Chrome rendering engine, something like that. So it's interpreting the style sheets and the HTML as I go along in order to have as similar as possible result that you will have from the browser. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, text small. Did I miss anything? Text. Yes, I put it on the wrong one, didn't I? Okay, let's move this from here to over here. All right, so I actually forgot something. Just for the sake of it, I want to show the posts from the most recent to the most to the oldest, right? So I'm just going to add a sort over here and say show by post date descending, because I am getting ready to actually show the application to working. All right. So let's take a first look to the application. I'm going to do the publishing process. So I just click one. It's called the one-click publish, and that magic that I was talking about is happening, right? So it's uploading this code, this meta model into the server. It's doing the check-in of the code. It's doing a merge if it needs to do, or figuring out if something is within conflict, extracting the source code, compiling what needs to be compiling, deploying what needs to be deploying, and so on and so forth. And now I can actually see the application running on my browser. And
That's
there you
incredible.
Go. Right? That's
to be honest, like really, like I have found that when I have to develop something, it's always somewhat of like a mystery box of like, okay, like I've done all this, time to check if it all like compiles together and works. And then about half the time you probably have found is that you hit compile and there's something wrong. So you don't even get to see the results of what the changes you've made. And so being able to do this, click right here and everything's usually handled for you on the back end. Perfect. This is the kind of development that I need in my life.
It's just, yeah, it's just incredible. Now, we'll get into that later. I want to talk about, so I actually want to make this a little bit interactive. So I would love if the audience could interact with this a little bit, right? Interact with the application as we are building it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how an application can be distributed, okay? So if I flip over here into the distribution tab, you can see that I do have a few options, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select the distribute as a PWA. We really love PWAs. We think it's the future. I know that Apple is not playing along with the PWA kind of thing, but imagine how cool it is to be able to send a mobile application to anyone without going through a store, right? Even if let's assume the application is free, right? You don't have to go to the store, you don't have to download it, you don't have to install it, and then it's complicated to update and so on and so forth. It's just a URL, right? So we are really into this PWA thing. But again, you can also distribute it through the traditional channels, right? We have this Generate Android app and Generate iOS app. Of course, Android and Google Play is fairly straightforward. I don't need to worry too much about certificates and stuff. So I can just click a button and generate the application. Now, you don't see me here with a Java setup and compiling and all that. We actually use Amazon for that. We use AWS for that. We have a farm of environments, both Android, set up to compile Android, and others set up to compile iOS, where we send the code into these farms. Your application gets compiled, and out comes the native application for you to install on your phone directly, or just distribute it through the app stores. Okay, we can do the same for iOS. I'm not going to do that because I don't have the build type and the certificate and the provisioning profile and all that stuff. So for our audience, I would really love see if you folks can scan this QR code, right? Or we can just copy the URL, and you folks can test this on your phones. If I put something on this chat, will it work or not at all?
So
I'm going to send it to your private chat, and we'll see how that goes. Okay.
So yeah, I've already sent it out. Yeah, I've already sent it out.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Awesome.
And so one thing I kind of wanted to ask. So, do you have like a set username, or can we like sign in?
Yes. I completely forgot about that. So, because of this use case, right, we cannot have anonymous users here. The user needs to be there. The username to use is Roz, R-O-Z, and the password is OutSystems. Okay. Sorry about
I just
that.
sent it there. No, it's okay. Let me just post that in the chat.
All right. Okay, so shall we do a little bit more coding? Let's see if we get some feedback from the chat, if folks were able to scan the QR code and open the application and put the username and password.
All right.
All right. So I'm just going to move forward, and then we'll revisit this. Okay. Now we are building an Instagram kind of thing, right? Use case. Mm-hmm. We need something to say like or unlike, right? We need to show to the user if the user has already liked this image, right, and give him some kind of way to actually do the like. Okay. So what I'm going to do is.
And sorry, Rui.
Go ahead.
I apologize. So for those of you who are just tuning in, this is Howdy Partner, a developer-centric show where we are showcasing partners as part of the Amazon Partner Network or AWS Partner Network that have built cool solutions on AWS. And today we have OutSystems, who is kind of showing how you can code on their platform without, really coding. So if you just joined us, welcome. I've sent out a couple of links in the chats. So if you want to kind of follow along and go actually into the demo that Rui is kind of going into, please log in, and I've added the username and password as well.
All right. Can I?
Oh yeah, sorry, Rui, go ahead.
All right. Okay. So as I was saying, I got the user. I need to give feedback to the user if he liked a certain post or not, and eventually give him a button to actually do the like, right? So first, I'm going to change this query a little bit. I'm going to add the post like table, right? Now, again, it tried to understand what I want to do, right? So I've got a post like. If you look at the post like, it has foreign keys both to user and the post ID, so it was able to relate the post with the post like. That's fine, right? But this is not exactly what I want, right? So it does try to infer what you're trying to look for, but you always have to check to see, hey, am I getting exactly what I want? And this is not what I want, because first, I want all posts, whether or not they already have a like, okay? So this cannot be only with, this has to be with or without, okay? And also, if there is a like, I want to show only my likes, right? So I can turn on something and give a visual cue that the user has that or not, right? Has liked or not. So I'm just going to add to this condition and say, well, you know what? If there is a post like over there, the user ID must be me or the person who is logged in. In this case, I'm just going to use a function that always returns the current logged in user. In this case, it's just get user ID. All right. So we're done here. Again, obviously, this is no black magic. So if I go in here, you will see that the with or without is actually a left join, right? And this is also an important thing, which is, so as developers, we tend to specialize in things, right? So we tend to go into areas where we feel more comfortable or we think it's more interesting and so on and so forth. So for example, I am perfectly comfortable in just typing SQL and doing really complicated SQL, right? But imagine the developer that doesn't feel so comfortable with SQL, but he can still do his basic queries using this, right? And so can I. I can look at this and instead of typing SQL, I can just use this. And there's a lot of OutSystems about that, right? Having something for everyone, having something for every type of developer. For example, I really don't like CSS and I make a mess and have a really bad design keen, right? I'm really bad at design, but I can do some things, right? I can structure a screen a little bit and so on and so forth, right? All right, so let's move forward. So now I can, I'm going to use something interesting, which is this visual if, right? So what is this thing, a visual if? Well, the if, what it does, it allows me to show a part of the screen if the condition is true, or show another part if the condition is not true, right? So I'm just going to drop it over here, okay? And the condition is going to say this. It's going to say, well, did the user already have a like there? So I'm going to just say, if there's a post like over there, right? If the post like, if the like of the post, let me say it this way, is other than null, then it means that the user has already liked that, okay? And in order to give that visual feedback to the user, I'm just going to use an icon. An icon, it's no more than a font, right? So it's pretty cheap in terms of resources. So I'm just going to use a full heart for the like, for the true, and I'm going to use an empty heart, right, for the false. Now, of course, we are not going to have black heart, so let's give it some color. Again, apologies for the CSS wizards on the audience, because I don't know how to do this any other way, but there you go. Color, blah, 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 whatever that is. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, finally, I want to actually implement a little bit of code, right? I want to say, hey, when you click here, change and make a like on the database. All right. So what I'm going to do is I am going to right click on this and I'm going to say link to and link to a client action. Okay. So now, or a client method, I should say a client method. So now I am into the coding realm, right? So change my view from the UI and I'm going into the code. And But remember that I called that little API just to make things a little easier or a little less boring. I do have an API here that has the toggle-like method, right? And this method accepts a user ID and a post ID, okay? Now, the user ID, you guys already know that I'm using the same function, get user ID, but the post ID I need to get from the context of the list, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an input parameter of this method, which I'm going to call post ID, okay? And so now I can fill this method over here. And now I need to pass the context from the list, right? So if I go back into the list and I go here into my link, it is now expecting me to pass a parameter on the post ID, right? So the post ID is the post ID, the contextual post ID of that particular list, right? Finally, the only thing I need to do next is just refresh the data, right? So again, this is obviously a asynchronous or client server, so to speak. So when I click, I'm sending a REST request back to the server that it's going to execute this toggle-like, okay? This
I have a quick
toggle-like,
question. Those
go ahead.
that's API call and everything else, those were included. Those were already in your libraries. Is that right? So you didn't have to customize them. Okay.
No, they are created as I'm creating the application, right? They are created on demand. Does that make sense? Or do you need this method over here?
Yeah, exactly. So when you clicked and dragged it, it exists, but it is there already. So then once you clicked and dragged it, it was created. But generally, it was already in that library. Is that correct?
Correct, right? So let me walk through it again. So in the beginning, right, I grabbed this method, this library, this module. Let's call it a code module, right? And I referenced these methods that are on another module of code, okay, which includes the toggle-like. And here on the Instagram core, which says that module, there you have the toggle-like method. And this method is pretty straightforward. It makes a query to see, has this user previously liked this post, right? If it finds it, it deletes the post. If it doesn't find it, it creates the post like. If it doesn't, it just creates the like. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if you were referring to the fact that
sorry, hold on.
I am
sorry. One thing. I think the Twitch did it. Nope. Never mind. I apologize. I interrupted for no reason. It was just my browser.
No worries. But for example, the same. I'm sorry. I keep bouncing the table and the camera and everything. But for example, this is a client-side method, right? So this method is going to be translated into JavaScript and executed on the browser, correct? And this one over here, right? So independent of already being in a module, is a server-side method that's translated into C# deploying the server. So when I do this, when I drag and drop a server-side method into a client-side method, that API specific for this application to use that method is created when I do the publish, right? Okay. Okay. I don't know if I lost everyone. Are you still there?
Yep, we're still good. I think Eugene's on mute. That's why.
Okay. Cool. So moving on. So right now I do have a button, right, that I can do like, let's publish and let's take a look. Right now, this is going to have some maybe unexpected behavior due to the fact that all of us are using the same user, right? So once you click like, it will light up, right? But then when they refresh, if there's someone else clicking on the same post at the same time, remember we are all the same user. But if we were different users, that the behavior would be normal. Okay, so I'm just now published, refreshed, and now you can just like and unlike the photos as you see fit, right? I can see folks interacting with that. This is awesome, right? Very good. I'm going to pause for comments or questions, and before I move to the next screen. Go ahead.
Yeah, so actually, before you go into the next portion, it seems like there's a couple. I mean, I think we've answered a couple questions already via the chat. But for 41 Wolves, so Rui is actually not really coding, like programming, like actual code per se, but he is creating a React app using the OutSystems platform. So for those of you who are joining us again, it seems like there's a couple of new folks. You're able to, so OutSystem is a development platform where you don't, I mean, as Rui is showing, you don't really have to like code in order to do this. A lot of this is very logic based, but keep asking questions. We're loving that. But we're gonna let Rui kind of finish what he's doing, and then we're gonna keep chugging along. But yeah, feel free to keep asking questions in the chat, and we'll get to you as soon as we can.
Yeah, I can just help answer questions.
And actually, Rui, I actually have a question.
Okay.
And so I talked a little bit about this at the very beginning, where like, for using like, AWS native services, we use device farms to kind of like test applications. But since you're not really writing like any code, and like, there's some API calls that like, you're creating, such as like that or like that library that you kind of imported with like AWS Graham, like core. So my question is, like, what kind of testing goes into this? Are there any type of unit tests that you have to write, or is this automatically kind of like, done for you with the OutSystems platform? Or is it just UAT testing?
No, you would write, it's exactly the same thing, right? You would write the unit tests using OutSystems, right? And then if you want to, usability tests and all that stuff, you do it the traditional way. So it's exactly the same thing. You write the unit testing just by using OutSystems. Now, there are a lot of checks, right? Because we do use this meta model, we have a lot of information about the code itself, right? So it's easy for us to infer a bunch of things, and some warnings will show up, or some things it will be immediately picked up as an error, right? So typically an OutSystems application generates a lot less of those traditional, most obvious, logic errors. But yeah, you would do your own testing like you do any other type of application or technology, whether you're using BDD or TDD or whatever testing methodology that you follow or framework. You would do that, but still using OutSystems. Okay. I do take a little bit of offense when you say that this is not coding, because I think this is coding.
The logic
this is
there.
real coding, right? Because I'm solving a business problem, right? Think about that. Think about
so what you mean, Eugene, is smarter coding. That's what you meant.
Yeah.
Apologies, Rui.
All right. No worries. Okay. I am going to. Okay, so now let's create another screen, right, where the user can actually take a picture and make a comment, right? So let's do that. So I'm going to go here to main flow. I'm going to create a new screen. Okay. I also want to do a screen from scratch. By the way, there are some templates over here of pre-baked screens that you can take it as an example and then change to your own. So I'm just going to call this, I don't know, new post, something like that. Right. So create a screen. Let's give it a name so that we know where we are, which will be obviously new post. And now I need a way to for the user to take a picture, right? So let's do that. I'm going to be very traditional. I know mobile applications don't look like this anymore, but I'm just going to, I'm just going to drag and drop an icon over here, okay? And I'm going to use, obviously, the camera icon for this. And then again, I'm going to create a small method in JavaScript to make use of the camera. So I'm just going to link this into a new client action, okay? And the client action is over here, right? I'm going to rename this. Okay? So I'm just going to say take picture, like that. And this is where that camera plugin, right, that I was talking about comes into play. So over here, I do have my camera plugin and the take picture method. Now, this take picture method, I can actually show them to you. So I can open this code again, right? Everything is open source and so on and so forth. So web take picture, you can see, right, that I can put JavaScript and JavaScript libraries directly on my code, right? So this is just a JavaScript library that activates the phone camera using the browser and takes a picture from it, okay? No more, no less, just pure, simple JavaScript, okay? So let's go back to our, yeah, I don't want to upload. I can actually close this. So I want to take picture. The take picture doesn't accept any input parameters, so it's really simplified, but it will output an image binary, okay? It will output a success flag, and it will output, if not, it will output some errors. Now, another cool thing that we are working on, and I'm glad I do have this, is, you know, we're trying to infuse AI in developing, so, or machine learning. I think it should be AI. In that sense of trying to understand what the developer is doing, right? And this is actually a good case. So if I click here, it will give me some suggestions, right? And because the one before does have this success and error and whatever, I can actually do this, right? And do my code step by step. So now if I go here, it will say, oh, if its success was false, let's show a message, right? And then it will help me build this. It's very interesting for new developers.
I would say that
But
AI-led development is like my favorite part of OutSystems is that logic flow right there. Yeah. And usually when people see it or get it, they're like, oh, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to do things the old-fashioned way, okay? Real coding. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this manually. So I'm going to put a condition here. I actually want to demonstrate how you code in here. So I'm just going to do a very little algorithm. So if take picture success, okay, I actually want it to go forward. So I'm going to swap the connectors. True. If it is false, I am just going to send a message to the user, right? So this message thing, it's going just to make a pop-up, you know, like make a widget show up on the screen with a message. And the message that I'm going to type is, you idiot user. No, let's not do that. What we're going to do is just pass the error message that it's coming from the plugin, from the camera plugin. Maybe the user didn't authorize the application to use the message. Maybe the user just canceled, clicked accidentally and then canceled, and so on and so forth. So we're just going to send that over there. Now, the next step that I want to do is to actually reduce this image a little bit, right? So for that, I'm going to use the other JavaScript method that I had here prepared, which is the resize. Takes a few input parameters. I'm just going to say, grab the image that was captured, right? And make it 800 pixels with maximum, okay? Something like that. Finally, I can store this image in a local variable, right? So on my screen, I'm going to create a local variable, which I'm going to call image. Okay. Now, when I type image again, you see how the platform tries to infer what you want. I said I want an image, and it automatically selected the binary data type for me, right? There are a bunch of data types as expected, right? Text, integer, long integer, blah, 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 and a few hundred other things. But, you know, just because I said image, it's like, okay, you have an image, maybe it's this what you want, right? The AI ML trying to understand what you're doing. Okay, so now I can just say, you know what? The image that is resulting from the resize, right, should be stored on my image variable. So I put the image variable here and I say, this is the resize. And I'm done over here. I'm going to pause for comments, thoughts before I start actually creating the interface for the user. Any takers?
Yeah. So there's actually one question on the chat, and actually something that I wanted to ask you about too, Rui. But how does well, actually, there's a couple questions. So the first one is like, now that like once you've kind of deployed like an application, and let's just say that the app like that, like that app becomes like a hit. How do you like what configurations are there for kind of making sure that the performance of the application is running well? I mean, I don't know if you want to go into like the secret sauce of how OutSystems does this, but
No. Okay, please continue. Yes.
oh, sorry,
Is
yeah,
that it?
yeah. So sorry, let me just ask the exact question that he was asking. So it seems like how would yeah, are there any configurations that enable like the actual developer who created like the app to kind of tweak the performance or in any way kind of like change the performance, or is that kind of managed by OutSystems?
No. Okay. So remember, there is no such thing as an OutSystems application. Okay. This
Okay.
is a React.js application or with a C# backend. And SQL, this one in particular has a SQL Server database supporting it, right? You would scale this exactly the same way as you scale if they were not done using OutSystems, right? It's exactly the same thing. Now, we offer our customers two modes of operation, mostly now, cloud first, right? Everyone is cloud first. Everything tries to go to the cloud. We offer an option where we manage we OutSystems, right? Manage the cloud instance for our customers. But there's nothing stopping our customers to say, I want to buy servers, right? EC2 servers in Amazon, buy my own and install OutSystems. That's perfectly possible. Okay. So then it's a matter of scaling up those servers, right? And understanding where are the bottlenecks and scaling that up. And it scales really well. I mean, we have really big customers that do enterprise mission critical applications using OutSystems. So if you're concerned, but I do get that a lot, from developers that is this like just for toy apps or does this thing scale? Yeah, it scales. And it scales because there's nothing proprietary. Well, there's nothing proprietary here, right? Of course, yes, there's this visual paradigm and the translation of the code and all that stuff. Yes, that's proprietary. There are some. Where did I have that? I had that over here. There are some management consoles of the server, right, and things like that. So I can see my factory and administer my development environment and see the logging. Let's take a look at the logging and all that stuff, right? And this is part of the platform, right? So this exists because there's the OutSystems platform is installed on your server. But then again, right, all of this stuff can run without OutSystems attached to it.
Yeah,
right?
I think the question was from Eugene, right? Like, I mean, it also has to scale because it's really designed for enterprise level development. So you have anywhere like Toyota using it, City of Oakland using it, car companies. There's a space company that uses it.
There are banks, there are fintechs, there are
Banks,
insurance companies that
the Pokemon company.
Chevron is our customer. So
Sorry. Yeah, no. Thanks, Rui, for answering that. No, the question kind of came from Utre Vizarov Pa. I think that's his. The name is supposed to be a French phrase. But anyways, he was. They were asking like, what happens if the developer is not happy with the performance of the web or mobile application? So that's the reason why I asked. Like, are there kind of configurations for kind of scaling up or scaling like out or anything like that? But no, thanks for answering that question, Rui.
All right. Okay, so let's build another user, the user interface for taking a picture, right? So I want user input, so I'm just going to use a form, and I want to put the image, right, that the user just took the picture, right? So I'm just going to say image binary data and get that data from the image variable. Then I want to actually, let's create another variable, the local variable, which I'm just going to call description or comment. I'm going to call it comment. Okay. And I'm just going to drag and drop the comment over here. And it's not what I wanted to do. Let me, where is it? Sorry, I made a mess. So, oh yes, because you see, this is the AI failing me because I typed comment, and comment is the same structure of a table, right? So it gave me a variable with the same structure as the table comment. You want to see here, as the table comment has, and I wasn't paying attention, right? So this is not what I want. I want the comment to be a pure and simple text, right? There we go. And now I can just drag and drop this over here, and boom, I've got a comment. Now, I don't want to use the normal input box. I want to use, there should be a text area here somewhere. There we go. So I'm going to use a text area to give a little bit more real estate for the user to type the comment, right? So I'm going to bind this input into the comment, and I'm going to bind this into the text area. Okay. Now all I need is to grab some buttons here, right? Put some buttons here. Let's again create a div. Let's create a button. I'm just going to call it post, something like that, right? And actually, I want to put another button, which I'm just going to say cancel. Okay. Now I want to let's make the post button slightly bigger. Okay. Now the cancel is fairly straightforward, right? I just need to link the user back into the home page. Okay, home page. And the post, I actually want to create a method for this. So I'm just going to put the post over here. So you see that it created the method post on click, and now I'm designing the code. Get this out of here. So now let's do a little bit of validations, right? So I'm just going to say, well, you know what? I want to make sure that the user actually typed something, right? So I'm just going to say, if the trim of the comment, right, is other than an empty string, then I want this thing to move forward, right? Swap, and I'm going to name it as comment, you know, to make it nice and clean. And if it does not have a comment, what I'm going to do is I am going to invalidate the input widgets, right? So I'm just going to say, you know what? The text area that the user was typing, I'm going to say it's no longer valid, right? So valid false. And the validation method is going to be, again, you idiot user. No. We're going to say something like, please enter a comment. There we go. Okay. Now, if all goes good, if all goes well, right, I am going to use the other part of my API, which was simply the new post. Okay. So again, I'm dragging and dropping a server-side method into a client-side method that's going to be run in the browser, and all that good stuff is going to happen, right? So the user ID, we already know that we want the user ID. The picture is the variable image that is over there, right? And the description is the comment that we have here, okay? What else do I need to do? Well, I just need to send the user, if the post is done, I just need to send the user back into the screen, right? So we go over here and say, go back to the main screen. All right, shall we give it a test? Let's try this. Pause for comments and questions while this thing publishes.
I don't so I think Sydney and I are answering all the questions in the chat, but they were asking kind of about, like, you know, other video teleconferencing capabilities, which, you know, Sydney shared that there's a Zoom plugin option for it. So I guess, like, you know, to like the resident audience members that are just joining, again, this is Howdy Partner, it was like Twitch Twitch series that's focused on a developer audience. So in the previous episodes, we've had like different partner that kind of showcases what developers can, like what tools developers can use to like monitor things, you know, make CI/CD easier. But today, I'm really excited, and I think, you know, most of everyone here as well too, is showcasing how developers can develop using OutSystems, OutSystems platform. And I think all the different kind of capabilities that Rui is kind of showcasing us today. So I do have one question, Rui, and this kind of brings this kind of back into the realm of like how OutSystem kind of fits in to like, how does OutSystem kind of integrate with like traditional companies? So like, traditional tech companies, you have like a certain set of like CI/CD pipeline already created. And I know that we've already been talking about like Toyota and other like, pretty big enterprise level companies that use OutSystems. Can you kind of just walk us through, you or Sydney, walk us through like how does OutSystem kind of fit into like a developer, like an engineering team, right?
Okay. So when we said OutSystems is a platform, right, it brings a lot of services with it. Services, actually, features, okay? Let's call it feature or a service. So OutSystems does have the capability to take care of the entire life cycle of its own applications, right? So the question comes is, now how do I play well with the others? So let's say we go into a company or a development team. They have their CI/CD pipelines already established and so on and so forth, and they need to trigger the OutSystems thing at very specific moments. So we provided APIs for that, right? So although we have a complete tool that will show you how to manage the promotion of code between environments, is it going for testing, shall it trigger the testings and so on and so forth, we can, through the use of APIs, connect, for example, with the Jenkins or something similar that will trigger in the appropriate moment, right? It will trigger a deployment for OutSystems, for example, right?
Cool. So yeah, no. So yeah, what it sounds like, it's pretty contained. And I mean, obviously, since big companies like Toyota are using it, it seems like it's integrated well. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of like to let the audience know of how this can kind of how OutSystems can be leveraged, either going from like a startup or all the way to enterprise level. But thanks for that explanation, Rui.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I completely forgot was I didn't create a way for the user to access from one screen to the other, right? So let's do that now. And again, just to be quick, I'm going to use yet another icon, okay? And let's use the typical plus. I know it's ugly and no one uses this anymore. And I'm just going to link this into the new post screen, right? So let's try this. Folks in the audience, please take a picture of the cat, your screen, your window, your favorite painting, and do a post over here. I always like to have something from the audience. So let's check it out. Okay. So now I do have the plus sign. Now this looks rather ugly. I need to take a look at this a little bit. So let me see here. I had get a document, Instagram, and I'm going to just say, go build those apps. There we go. And now I'm going to post. Oh, plenty of pictures.
Nice.
Oh, this is nice. All right. No, not plenty. Just a couple of them. Right. So.
Thanks, person.
Say it again.
Oh, I was just like, thanks, person.
Right.
Oh my God! Someone took a picture of
pictures and so on and so forth. I always like, it's always fun to get some. While I'm doing this, I'm going to pause for questions and thoughts and comments. While I am going to just touch this a little bit, because to me it is horrendous that this thing shows like this, right? So I'm just gonna go while you folks collect some feedback. I'm going to put a visual if over here, okay? And I'm going to completely hide the screen, right? So I'm going to put the form into the false part of this condition, right? And I'm going to say if the image is equal to null binary, right? Which means that has the user taken a picture yet or not, right? So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to create some kind of empty state, right? Blank state. So I've got here a it's a widget, right? It's just a collection of JavaScript and HTML, which is called blank slate, right? So I'm going to drop you here. And I don't want to use, so this is kind of pre-baked. It's one of the widgets that are available. Of course, I want to use the camera, right? I don't want the camera to be that big, right? And I'm just going to say start by taking a picture, right? Or start by taking a picture. That's fine. And I'm going to link this into the where is it? The take picture and click. Okay. So now that when I publish, hopefully this looks a little bit better and makes a little bit more sense. Thoughts, comments, questions, anyone? Slacker of the year. Wonderful.
So I think not a question, but I can answer Respectful Helper's question about, is the app connected to AWS? So I think you mentioned earlier that this can, like, the application that you're building on OutSystems can really be hosted anywhere. So I guess right now, like, where is this being hosted?
Right now in AWS.
Okay. So it's on AWS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have this program we call it the personal environment, so to speak. Okay. So what is this program? Anyone who registers in OutSystems as part of the OutSystems community, you don't need to be a customer, but everyone that registers, we give them an AWS environment with OutSystems installed for learning and playing and building apps. Okay. I've got a bunch of them, right? So this one that you see over here, RB demos dev OutSystems Cloud. This is a personal environment running on the OutSystems Cloud. So if you folks want to give it a shot, want to try it, want to take it for a spin, you can just go to OutSystems, right? You register, and you will get your own personal environment. Now, this is not a trial, right? It's not a 30-day trial. This is not a subscription. Absolutely nothing like that, right? It's yours. It's yours forever. It may fall asleep and eventually disappear, but because of inactivity. But you can always go back and say, "Yeah, I need an OutSystems environment," and it pops back up, right? So we give everyone that wants to explore OutSystems the possibility to go and create apps using using this platform. Obviously, we also present we also have online training courses, everything available for free, no credit card required. You can just go in and build some apps. I do encourage people to go and make as many apps as they can, right? So for example, you can do a lot. Imagine you have a friend, you have a family, they have a small business. They could really use an app that you promised them that you were going to do in React.js, but it actually takes a long time to do. Hey, try it with OutSystems, right? Let's say you go and participate on a hackathon, right? That problem-solving, product design, marathon kind of thing. Try it with OutSystems, right? You'll see that you can get much more done, be much more efficient at the end of the day. And of course, your soccer club, your church, your whatever group of interest that you have, if they can benefit for it, just go ahead, get them a personal edition and build them an app.
Cool. So I think 41 Wolves, if I'm understanding your question correctly, so if this is being hosted on AWS, how does that work with the max user pricing model? Are you talking about, I think if you're hosting this on AWS, like any other typical application, the same type of pricing model applies. So if you're hosting it on EC2, there's 3 different ways that you can pay for it, right? Which is on demand, spot pricing, or like reserved instance pricing. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think overall, if it's anything to do with pricing and hosting something, the same type of pricing model applies. So
yeah, it's fairly similar, right? So we do abstract for our customers. We do abstract a little bit the pricing model of Amazon, right? So it goes like things, how many front-end servers would you like? What's the capacity of the database, and that type of thing. So it's similar, but it's a little bit more abstracted. But I really didn't want to go like into commercial thing. But for example, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you want to do a startup, you want to, make a proof of concept. Just use the personal edition, right? The OutSystems licensing model is designed for an enterprise. Okay, so if you want to do something small or just take it for a spin, the personal edition is good enough, right? It does have enough power for you to do a proof of concept, or show your killer application that it's going to change the world into an investor or something like that.
Awesome.
Should I stop sharing my screen? I don't know if my screen is still being shown.
Yeah, your screen is still being shown. I just wanted to just say again, if anyone in the audience still have any questions, I think now is a great time to kind of ask them. Otherwise, I guess like
Sorry, could you stop sharing my screen so I can bring the stream online?
Yeah, absolutely. We just
so I don't have those weird effects of like a visual feedback infinite kind of thing.
Sure.
There we go. All right. Much better. I can actually look at all you.
Okay. So I guess 41 Wolves. I think we were talking a little bit about. So sorry, 41 Wolves was asking about the pricing of OutSystems. So in the pricing and additions, webpage of OutSystems, there's free, basic, standard, and enterprise. So I guess their question was focused around why. Why host on OutSystems, whether you can host on AWS if there's no kind of pricing limit. But yeah, Rui, I don't know if you have Rui or City, if you have any comments on that. But I think that kind of answers that themselves. If they want to host it, they have to have a certain level of kind of pricing plan. If they want OutSystems to host it, they want to have a certain probably pricing plan if they want their apps to be used by millions of people. But I think I'll kind of just leave that question there.
Okay.
So Sagrix asked, "Hey Rui, any ETA for the platform's live version with a dark theme? Will it be cross-platform?"
You saw the dark theme, didn't you? So as I was, I don't know if you saw this from the beginning. I was using the absolute newest version. It's still in beta for the IDE, for the what we call Service Studio. It's coming, right? I don't have a firm date, yes, but it's coming. It's coming, and it's, as you can see, it's already working, right? A few functionalities still missing that they haven't ported, but it's almost there. If you're curious about that, my big first impression, it is lightning fast compared to the old one, right? It was really amazing what they've done, and this one will also work in a Mac OS, which was a long problem that we had before.
Yeah. And also I would say for those who are on the chat, feel free to hang out with us, come join us. Both Rui and I will be leading our own sessions at the Cloud Innovation Summit with AWS. So maybe Braeden, if you want to drop the summit, you can come check it out. There's going to be other devs there. If you can't make it to the summit, even though it's virtual, we also just have a developer community that you can join. We have about 400,000 other devs, so that if you have questions just like this on how to build, or if you're stuck somewhere, if you're looking to someone for help, we have other devs that can just help from the community that will just help answer questions. We have a pretty quick turnaround time. I've seen most questions get answered within the next within 2 hours, as an example. Yeah, and there's a summit. I think so. The summit's in May. Like I said, we'll have Rui and I will have our own tracks, and you can come hang out, ask questions. Also, just follow up. It'd be great to see your guys' names again. That'd be super fun.
Okay.
All right.
So yeah, if there aren't any other questions, I just want to kind of thank Rui and Sydney again for kind of showcasing how to build an Instagram clone the way that they've done with OutSystems. Braeden, I'm gonna let you go kind of close the episode because I always kind of forget the
Wait, can I
different
have one
phrases.
more plug? I'm
Oh,
gonna drop one
Yes.
more plug.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
y'all. If you're just like, man, this Twitch stream was so fun, I'm gonna miss them so much. We have more content. So I host the Decoded podcast, which is a podcast for developers. There's an episode season 2 with AWS Amplify and OutSystems, and you can just learn more there. So
all right, and
You
let's.
have a link to that podcast?
yep,
Yeah, I just sent
put
that
it.
out.
Oh, okay, yeah, put it in there.
All right.
Put me in your pocket, y'all. Put me in your ears.
Very good.
All right, so I'll take us off here. So thank you very much, Sydney and Rui. That was very insightful. I'm beyond pumped. I mentioned in the chats. I work with IoT, and so with IoT, there's often a use case to build a mobile app, and so this is perfect for being able to just test out some of those ideas. And so with that, we're gonna go ahead and sign off. The way we like to sign off here, Sydney and Rui, is we got 3 catchphrases that we say that we all choose collectively and we'll say together. So one of them is happy trails. The other one is y'all come back now or giddy up. So which one do you prefer to use today?
Sydney.
I want to say
you
giddy up.
choose.
All right.
This is my favorite.
So on a count of 3, we're going to say giddy up and we're going to sign off. Everyone, thank you very much for coming. Join us again next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. But until then, 1, 2, 3.
Giddy up.
Giddy
Giddy
up.
up. All
Thank you,
right.
everybody. You
Feel
take
fun.
care.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.